here for the feast.
About 8 years ago, my girlfriends and I would download Plenty of Fish and meet random guys to take exploring with us. Definitely not the smartest, especially since we were out in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. This one night we met a guy. Let's call him Todd. Todd was an odd guy. He seemed socially distant, and when he slid into the back of my SUV, I instantly got the feeling of regret. We were going to a place called Roney's Point, a very interesting place in West Virginia. You should look it up if you're into ghost and haunted history. Todd wanted to stay in the car for a bit to scope out the area while us girls went ahead to explore. Red flag. I was so sure he was going to try and steal my car. We went into the abandoned hospital, and out of nowhere, here comes Todd around the corner. Scared us so bad, we let out a slight scream. Tom started making comments about how his great-grandfather was a security guard at the asylum. It's right next to the hospital, and that his grandfather told him some stories about how they would shoot at the sick individuals for fun. He laughed and said, "How much fun would that be?" We continued to explore and Todd just hung out in the background. We eventually left and Todd insisted on sitting behind me in the car. I needed gas, so I started driving to the nearest gas station. Maybe 2 minutes up the winding road, I feel his slimy hands creep up and start massaging my shoulders as I'm driving. I keep leaning forward to give him the hint that I was not interested. As he is massaging my shoulders, he's telling my friends and I how stupid we are for inviting random strangers out, how we never know who's getting into our car, and how they might hurt us, etc. He started laughing again, and I will never forget the tone of his voice or the grip of his hands on my shoulders. He said,
Maybe that person's in the car with you right now.
I pulled into the gas station and demanded he get out of the car. He did, and I left him there. We got back home and my friends went on to Plenty of Fish to block him, but he already blocked her or deleted his account. We never heard from him again, but we stopped inviting random people to urban explore and ghost hunt with us. Now, this is something I really want to talk about, to be sure that everyone is cautious and stays level-headed at all times. Now for context, I live in the middle of nowhere in Canada. It was an old town that had quite a few abandoned buildings due to absence of residents. Me and many friends were tired of the lack of entertainment options for us. So what we did was explore these abandoned buildings. Prior to the experience I'm about to talk about, we never had anything too crazy happen to us. Occasionally we'd see a small bit of blood-like liquid, and we did see a pentagram on the ground from someone who went to a house previously, but nothing too bad. Until the last time I had gone exploring abandoned buildings. Now, when I was younger, I used to go to a daycare that was part mental hospital. Weird combination, I know. It closed down due to the lack of parents and lack of children at the daycare. I decided to go back there with my friends a few years ago. For context, I was 15 when this happened. Most of my friends were the same age. When we did get there, it was rather cliche. There was fog, it was rather dark, and there was a light drizzle of rain. We went to the main gate, which was padlocked shut. We decided to help each other hop over it, and made a ton of noise. We were laughing and giggling the whole time, unsuspecting of what was to come. We looked around the small playground with flashlights we had on our person. Even with our somewhat powerful flashlights, our visibility was rather limited. We decided to enter the decaying building. Glass and dirt crunched under our feet as we stepped into the daycare section of the complex. There were still old Legos, wood chips from previous furniture, old torn dolls and toys strewn about. The further we walked around the daycare section, we naturally became more and more silent, until all we could hear was the crunch of the dirt under our feet. I found some crayons in a plastic container in the corner of the room. I walked over to pick them up when, all of a sudden, we heard a loud crash coming from behind a metal door leading to the psych ward part of the building. My friends and I all looked at each other. As a whole, we were a group of 5. Most of them were very bold and cocky. We all looked at each other when my friend Brian suggested we go and look to see where the sound came from. Personally, I was not fond of the idea, but with my group of friends, there was no way anyone was going to decline such a thing. We all stacked up on the door and opened it. It was rusted to the floor, and we heaved to get it open. As we walked in, the metallic smells and must became stronger, with a hint of something else which I couldn't put my finger on at that moment. We walked in, our flashlights pointed in every direction with Brian leading the group. The hallways were tight, and to the left and right were the occasional metal doorway, some with doors open. I felt slightly claustrophobic, and it felt a little hard to breathe. As we continued, Brian shone his flashlight into a room and recoiled. We all stopped walking as Brian slowly entered the room. "What is it?" I asked him. "I thought I saw someone here. It seems all fine now." To be honest, I thought he was just messing with us to increase our anxiety. But looking back, I think he was completely honest. He backed out of the room and we continued walking deeper into the psych ward, when another friend swiftly told us to stop. We came to a halt and all listened. In the distance ahead of us, we heard the subtle pitter-patter of footsteps echo through the hallway. We all looked at each other, fear in each of our eyes. Brian continued walking towards the sounds. We considered turning back for a second without Brian, wondering if some ghost or something was in the building. But we couldn't do that to him. The closer we got, the more I felt like I was being watched. When finally we entered a room on the right, which had the smell of rotting meat. In front of us was a dead deer. Its innards were spilled all over the floor, staining the concrete. A friend of mine had a very weak stomach and vomited all over the place. That's when we heard whispering from somewhere. Brian shone his flashlight to the corner of the room where a man with short hair was standing with his head down. He wore a bright green t-shirt stained with what I assume was blood, and torn beige pants. He did not have any socks and his feet seemed damaged. He was twitching sporadically and continued to mumble even after we saw him. We stared at him for a solid 30 seconds before he made his first true movement. He looked at us with a haunting grin that sent shivers down our spine.
"You guys here for the feast?"
He said, each word with varying inflection and energy. This kicked us over the edge and we bolted out of the room, all the way back to the daycare center. The door was still open, and we decided to try and slam it shut, but the rust and pure weight of the door almost kept it open. It took 3 of us, pulling with all of our strength to close it. And just before we did, I could see the silhouette of a man watching us, his white teeth being the only other human features I could see. As we sat behind the metal door, catching our breath for a second, all looking at each other for confirmation that we all saw the same thing. After a little bit of labored breathing from each of us, we heard a light tapping on the door. That's when we decided that it was time to leave. We booked it out of the vicinity completely and ran home. A year after we visited that spot, police went back to do a routine search of the area and found a man. It was stated that this guy used to go to the psych ward before it closed down. He escaped the facility he was transferred to and lived off of the wildlife around the complex. When the cops brought him in, he had a series of diseases and sicknesses from eating raw meat. His mental condition was much worse than before. There were future rumors that he did kill someone in the forest while searching for food, but nothing has been confirmed. In the end, guys, be careful, especially in dangerous areas such as abandoned buildings. This happened over 20 years ago. There was a phase my friends and I went through where we would go on dares and little nightly adventures. It was a late summer night. I went with 3 other friends and we 4 would always get up to mischief together. The dare that night was to go into a famous abandoned hospital, which was about 20 minutes away by car. Actually, I had been to this abandoned hospital 3 times before, and I wasn't all that impressed or interested in going again. I mean, there was nothing but mountains and fields as far as the eye could see, as it was in the countryside, and there were no girls there, so I was all like, what's the point, guys? But they managed to convince me that there wasn't much else to do that night, and it would be fun. There are a bunch of rumors about that place. They say that it was originally a mental institution, and that it was the largest abandoned hospital in all of Kanto. They say that it's cursed, and there are even rumors about a secret basement. There were plenty of rumors like these, but now I am older, I realized that I didn't ever doubt the credibility of these rumors. Unlike today, back then those rumors were spread by word of mouth, and possibly by chainmail or text messages. We didn't have the internet to rely on. My friend drove. We took flashlights. It was really dark since it was in the middle of nowhere. We walked a few minutes in the dark, and the road widened a little, and then we saw the hospital. It gave off a strange presence that night. It felt different. It was a 3-story building with a rooftop. This rooftop was said to be one of the most active spots for paranormal activities. They say that something lingers there. Well, the first time I came to the hospital, I thought that it was pretty scary. But now it was the 3rd time, and nothing had happened the previous times I'd came. I wasn't really feeling creeped out or anything. It could have been because I was with 3 other guys too. We were passing through the overgrown bushes and thickets outside the hospital ground, and that was when I came up with an idea. It wasn't really a dare if we all went as a group, I said to my friends. So I said, why don't we go up to the roof one by one, and then, when you get there, call the next person up. For the other guys, it was their first time, so I was hoping to see them getting all freaked out. I thought it was a pretty decent idea. We played rock, scissors, paper to decide the order of who would go up first. I will refer to the friend who went first as A from here on out. A started off through the busted-in entrance doors, and we stood outside and watched. My 2 other friends were joking around and saying things like, why don't we just leave him here and go home? Then, we heard A shout from the rooftop. Oi! He got up there faster than I expected. He must have sprinted. I looked up at A, and there were some other silhouettes up there with him, waving down to us. Wait, there are other people here? I said aloud. As I said, the abandoned hospital had become kind of legendary, as there was still medical equipment and records scattered throughout the building. It still felt like a hospital, and at the same time it felt very abandoned. Does that make sense? I think this is why there were so many rumors. So it was popular with young people in our area as well as people from outside the area. There were some who just wanted to see it from a tourist point of view too, I guess. If you drove past on a weekend, you could always see cars parked up there and people taking photos. I'm not sure if all these people went in, but it proved to be a popular place. I said to my friend next to me, man, there's people here even on weekday nights? This ain't good, man. Then, he was called to the roof, which only left me and 1 other friend. Then, I heard my friends call out to my final friend. Oi, they shouted. I looked closer, and there seemed to be even more people up there than before. I guessed that they were making friends. There looked to be about 10 people there. It didn't seem fun if there was a whole gang of people there. It was supposed to be spooky, right? While I was thinking this, I heard my friend, who was the last to leave my company, call out to me. Oi. Charming. Everyone on the roof seemed to be pacing around restlessly. I headed into the entrance. The walls were scrolled with graffiti. I climbed the stairs to the roof. When I got to the roof, I felt a blast of cold night air against my skin, and then I was shocked by something. I could only see my 3 friends on the roof. I felt sure I was about to be pranked, but I decided to ask the obvious question. Guys, weren't there others up here with you? We just looked at one another, puzzled for a while in silence. The wind blew and suddenly, we all heard a terrible voice calling,
Oi!
Someone started running and we all followed. We bolted down through the abandoned hospital through the gap in the fence. I took a look back on the roof and I swear I saw shadowy figures moving back and forth on the roof. The wind carried the dreadfully moaning "Oi" sound. We scrambled into the car and hightailed it out of there. We stopped at the closest light source, which happened to be a convenience store. We never went back. I am a 28-year-old female. The story I'm about to tell you happened back in 2016 with my best friend Chris. Now, ever since the day Chris and I met, we have always got ourselves in the dumbest things ever. I mean, Chris ran away once and had my nerves all messed up. But he came back because he had no money. We were not the smartest teens, but we still enjoyed life. So one summer night, Chris and I were hanging, and we were trying to think of a place to explore like we always did. At the time, I told him I've never been to the old rock house in Greenwood, South Carolina. Now, before I get started, let me give you a little history on the rock house. A man named Thomas Payne Tolbert built a fireproof house in 1926. The fireproof house was constructed entirely from stone, concrete, glass and steel. After years of family homes burning down, Tolbert lived in the detached kitchen and used the large house to store family heirlooms. Tolbert lived his later lives in isolation. The now crumbling fortress is accessible only by foot, and no one has ever lived inside its walls. You can look up way more about the history online if you like. Now, back to my story. I've always been told the rock house has many spirits in and around it, but like I said at the time, I've never been to it. So with that said, Chris and I took my cousin's car and headed out to the old rock house. I've heard of people going in the daytime, but never heard people say they went at night. We, being dumb, went at night because why not? Ghosts and spirits never bothered me too much, being that I've seen them my whole life. Once we pull up to the woods and park on the side of the road, I get the bad feeling run all over my body. I sit there for a moment. I believe Chris sees this look on my face and asked if I still wanted to do this. Something is telling me not to get out. But at the same time, I want to see this place, even at night. Yeah, let's go see how scary this place is, I told him. Hell yeah, let's do it, he replied. We get out and start walking through the woods. As we are walking, we have our phones out for light, and we're making jokes, acting silly like we always do. We can never take anything seriously, no matter what. As we are walking, we don't realize how quiet it is to be in the woods, at night, in the middle of summer. We find our way to the front of the house. Chris is in front of me, and we are looking at the house. No front door and no windows. All you can see is pure darkness. For some reason, I just can't move, even though Chris is walking to what used to be the door. At this moment, I realize we are in complete darkness, and there are no sounds. No animals, no bugs, no wind or anything. Just pure silence. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I see something in the top left window. But before I completely look, I hear something to the left of me, and I look over. I see nothing, only the darkness. A feeling of dread falls over me, but nothing is there. Chris is now at the door of the house and looks inside. I look at the windows, and there it is. Something is there in the window looking down at me. My body turns cold. Those eyes. I'll never forget those eyes, burning a hole in my soul. Bright, yellow reddish eyes like fire. All of a sudden I hear Chris say, "Oh, hell no." He turns to run to me, but my body is still frozen. He grabs my wrist and pulls me to run. He never lets me go. As we are running, we are jumping over fallen trees and everything on the ground that people have left over time. As we run, we realize something is running beside us, and I don't dare to look back. My body is now in pilot mode as Chris has the grip still on my wrist pulling me. My mind is blank, and my heart is racing. At one time, I feel like I can feel the breath of whatever is chasing us. The moment we make it to the car, everything comes back to me, and I'm back in control of my mind and body. We jump in the car, and Chris goes to start the car. He has his face in the steering wheel as he tries to start the car. But it's dead. The car is dead. We start freaking out with my head buried between my legs and Chris is hiding his face. I yell out, "This is it, Chris. This is how we die. This is why people like us die in movies. Because we do dumb shit like this." Chris yells back at me, "Shut up. We're not gonna die. The car will start." I can still feel this thing outside of the car. It's just there. Is this why there's so many spirits here? Does it take the souls of people it has caught coming here? I feel it looking at us. Something wants me to look, but at the same time, a voice in my head is telling me not to. I want to cry. The car starts and Chris tries to speed off. We start going down the road, but then one of the tires blows. We are now on the side of the road again, and we just sit there, not wanting to get out. It's quiet again. The feeling of being watched is still there. Luckily for us, a guy in a truck pulls up behind us. I feel safe right now. The guy pulls over and helps Chris change the tire. I hold my phone as a light with my back to the woods. I still have that feeling. I want to turn and see what is there, but I dare not to. Something is telling me not to look. After the tire gets fixed, we head to the huddle house close by to calm down. The poor lady working that night sees something is wrong, and with what little money we have, the lady helps us pay for a meal. The next few days, strange things start happening around my house. For example, I'm in the kitchen fixing something for lunch. My roommate and I are talking like normal, and the cutting board goes flying across the kitchen. She gives me this look and says, "See what you caused?" Shit like that keeps happening for no reason, all because you wanted to visit haunted places. I pick up the cutting board. At this point, I feel like I need to make things right. I've always been told that if you disturb the dead, that you have to make things right. So with that being said, that weekend I go to see some friends who don't live too far from the rock house and tell them I need to go there. So we do. This time it's full daylight. Once we get there, I have this feeling, but I don't say a word. Once we get to the house, my friends go in to look around. They explore the place, inside and out. I look to the left of me and see nothing, but the feeling is there. My body is weak. As I walk in, I look in the direction that Chris saw something at. Then, I look into the room to the left of me and see the room is full of designs and paint all over the room. The whole house is covered the same way. But there is something about this one room. I walk into the room. There is a pentagram with all the markings around it. I walk over to it and examine it closely. I walk around it, seeing if it's done right, and my eyes see that it is. I yell out to my friends, I think someone tried to summon a demon or something." As soon as the words leave my mouth, something comes crashing down. I nope the hell out of there and just start running out of the house, sadly leaving my friends inside not meaning to. All I do is run through the woods yelling, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." I don't stop until I'm out of the woods. My friends come after me wondering what is going on, so I tell them about the other night and what just happened as well. At this point, I just want to leave. We all get into the car. The friend driving goes to start the car. It's dead, just like the other night, but in a different car. My mind goes back to the other night, and this big dark creature comes to my mind for some reason. I'd never seen it before. Was it the thing chasing us that night? Was it putting itself into my mind to scare me more? So many questions. I tried my best not to freak out. I called my roommate to come pick us up. As we were waiting, a car pulls up. He must live on this road and knows something happened. He says every time someone goes to the house, their car is dead when they get back. He helps jumpstart the car, and we go down the road. I see my roommate, and I jump out of the car and jump into mine. I speed off as fast as I can, wanting to get as far away from this place as possible. My friends meet me at my house, and I made a promise to myself to never go back to the rock house. For some reason, Chris and I stopped hanging out. We didn't get into a fight or anything, we just stopped being friends, and we never spoke about what happened that night until a few weeks after. We both seemed to have forgotten that night. I called him and asked him what it was that he saw that night inside the house, to make him do what he did. He doesn't remember what he saw, but he remembers that night. I thought I wouldn't forget, but I did until a few weeks ago. Someone told me that a brain will block out something so traumatizing that you won't remember what happened and live your life like normal. Maybe that's what our brains did for us, so we won't live in fear forever. Hello watchers and listeners, thank you so much for watching. If you have a story to share, please send it to my email in the description below. This channel is mostly made up of stories sent in by viewers or people they know, or people I know. Another way to support the channel is to sign up for my Patreon, where you can watch my videos ad-free. More perks will be added once I get back from Australia in November. Also, I will be redoing my merch store when I get back, so keep an eye out for that one. Thank you all for your continuous support. And remember,
Papa loves you.